Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgie Cavan-Smith. Tonight, a packed stadium and cheering crowds at Liberia's first democratic transfer of power in 70 years. Former soccer star George Weah is sworn in and vows to make the tackling of social inequality and unemployment his priorities. Also, there's international condemnation of DR Congo's disproportionate use of force in cracking down on anti-government protesters. At least half a dozen are reportedly killed, this over the weekend. Witnesses accuse police of using live rounds. And there's more hope for recovery for East African cancer patients after Uganda finally replaces its radiotherapy machine after a 2-year wait. But first, thousands of people turned out to witness the swearing-in of Liberia's new president on Monday. Former international football star George Weah took office promising to crack down on corruption and make the tackling of unemployment a priority. It's the country's first peaceful transfer of power in more than 70 years. Weah supporters say that they have high hopes.
I feel the impression to know that it was truly decided by the people, and this leadership is all about the people. So we are truly impressed, and we keep to show him that emotional love to know that we are truly there for him.
I'm here because of George Weah. I love him so much. I know that he's trouble. We are poor people. That is why I'm here. I'm here because of my country. I know that he will do more for us. That is why I'm here. I'm so happy. I've been behind him since 2014.
Well, France 24's Catherine Norris-Trent was at Weah's inauguration, and she tells us more about the start of his new administration.
It was an extraordinary day in the Liberian capital. 35,000 people packed into the National Football Stadium to watch the former football star George Weah sworn in as president. It was a celebratory atmosphere, and George Weah himself drew parallels with a big match day, saying in his inaugural address that he'd spent years of his life in stadiums, but that this was a feeling like no other. Now, he was taking over from Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in the first peaceful transfer of power Liberia has seen in more than 70 years. Weah said this was the dawn of a new Liberia, and he pledged several times to crack down on corruption. That drew particularly loud cheers from the crowd. Now, George Weah's road to the presidency is a remarkable rags to riches tale. He grew up in the poorest slum in the country before being spotted by a football scout and going on to have a dazzling international career. Along with my colleague Sylvain Rousseau, I went back to the streets where the new president grew up to retrace his roots. The sprawling slum of Claratown on the edge of Liberia's capital city. It's here that incoming President George Weah was raised. His nephew takes us to visit the family home.
At where George Weah used to stay before leaving for Cameroon.
He now sleeps in the president's former bedroom and is inspired by his journey.
He grew up in a slum community. Anything is possible. Don't never look down upon yourself. Once you have the confidence, trust yourself, you can make it.
George Weah's start in life was far from easy. He never knew his father, and his mother left him here as a baby to be raised by his grandmother and extended family. Later, he'd roam the streets of the slum with his friends. His aunt Rebecca remembers him as outgoing.
George Weah, he was a good boy. He used to love people. Many friends he used to have. He had plenty of friends.
I am going to make a cake. I am going to make
Today, the slum's children have better opportunities. Multi-millionaire Weah funded a new school right next to his house. As a teenager, he dropped out, so former classmates were somewhat surprised when he told them he was seeking the presidency.
We were shocked. We were good for nothing children not playing football. But who knew at that time that George was going to reach this stage? Nobody knew.
This is the pitch where George Weah used to train as a teenager before heading abroad to begin a glittering career in international football. And it's coming here that you really get a sense of his extraordinary journey from one of the poorest slums in Liberia to the highest office in the land.
Catherine Norris went there for us in Monrovia. Now, the UN and France have condemned Congolese security forces for fatally shooting at least 6 people during protests against President Joseph Kabila. Sunday's rally was organised by the Catholic Church, but was cut short when police in Kinshasa opened fire. Authorities claim only 2 people were killed. Violent incidents have escalated since Kabila stayed on past the 2016 end of his constitutional term. Witnesses to the weekend's violence say police used live rounds to shoot at crowds. Thomas Nicolas tells us more.
This is the parish of St. Francis in downtown Kinshasa. Many witnesses are still shocked by the level of violence police used to prevent anti-government demonstrators from setting out on Sunday's march. Jean-Baptiste is a surgeon. He was here when Mass ended.
We were here talking about how things would go. We were organising the march. And when I turned around, I saw a machine gun on top of a police car, which was outside, driving past the gate. All of a sudden, they turned the barrel towards us and aimed at us. I had just enough time to run and hide here. And then I heard bursts of gunfire. Just one.
After finding shelter, Jean-Baptiste tried to save a young woman's life who he says got hit by a bullet.
So I massaged her heart, then gave her mouth to mouth. There was a light pulse in the carotid artery, but she was losing too much blood. She urgently needed a transfusion. We couldn't do it here, so I decided to take her to the closest hospital. But unfortunately, when we put her in the taxi, she was already dead.
The police spokesman was not available on Monday for an interview, but he says that no lethal weapons were used on the 21st of January, only tear gas and rubber bullets. Now, Kinshasa is back to normal, but the tension might rise again in the next few weeks if the Catholic Church organizes new protests to put pressure on the government.
Cameroon's Minister of Communication has told France 24 that he can neither confirm nor deny claims that the head of the Anglophone separatist movement in his country is being held in Nigeria. Supporters of Sisiku Al-Tabe say that he and 9 others were taken away from a hotel in Abuja by members of the Nigerian Secret Service earlier this month. Now, Yaoundé's crackdown on English-speaking secessionists has led to thousands of refugees who fled the violence. Last October, separatists symbolically declared independence for the so-called state of Ambazonia. The government says that most Cameroonians don't want to split the country and insist that it will not negotiate with those that do.
How can the Cameroonian government sit around a table with a group of people whose aim is to amputate a part of our country? Nowhere in the world would that be possible. We will not negotiate with a group of people whose aim is to amputate a part of the country to create a hypothetical republic.
And finally, cancer patients in East Africa have been given hope of a better shot at recovery. Uganda's only radiotherapy machine has finally been replaced. It took nearly 2 years after the last one broke down for a replacement to arrive. That left thousands of patients in the region without life-saving treatment. The new machine will help, but the calamitous effects of its absence have highlighted the flaws in the country's underfunded health system. Grania Harrington and Tina Smollett report from Kampala.
It's a day of celebration and relief. 21 months ago, the breakdown of the country's only radiotherapy machine caused a major crisis in Uganda and a public outcry over the state of the country's crumbling healthcare system. The previous machine had been malfunctioning for years, making treatment long and inefficient. Now its replacement is finally up and running, and the authorities are keen to show that patients will be getting the best care possible.
We are going to be treating more patients, and we are going to kind of be going faster through the queues that we have than in the past. So in a way, the volume of patients that we'll be treating will be more, and we'll be treating them better.
For many, the new radiotherapy machine is simply the difference between life and death. Barbara is a 37-year-old mother of 6. She has stage 2 cervical cancer. After travelling hundreds of kilometres from her home village to Kampala for radiotherapy, she slept on the ground outside the cancer unit because she couldn't afford accommodation. She now has a bed, thanks to this charitable hospice. But while the new machine has given her hope, she's afraid of having to wait too long for treatment.
I knew the old machine had stopped working, but in December I learned that this new machine was working and other patients were being treated. Because there were so many people, new patients arriving, plus the people who had already been waiting, then it became very hard for us new patients to get treatment.
It's not just the long line of patients that's causing delays. Healthcare workers and patients have told us that although the treatment is meant to be free of charge, patients who have money are paying to move up the waiting list, while the very poorest must wait. The authorities at the Cancer Institute say they're aware of these accusations and are determined to eradicate corruption. But in a healthcare system that's already grossly underfunded, the new radiotherapy machine is only a part of the solution.
That's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.